Ladies and gentlemen, this is Jay Michaels, and we are in the Passion Pit with Stanley Livingston. Now, you may say to yourself, where have I heard that name? Well, let your mind usher back to the golden age of television, and you would be talking to Chip Douglas, right? The last name was Douglas?
Richard Douglas, Chip Douglas, yes.
Douglas of My Three Sons, one of the groundbreaking shows when you think about it in the golden age of television. So we're really thrilled to have him, and he's been a journeyman within the industry, and he's still plugging away today. So we have a great sage with us who's going to talk with us.
Well, I've got 65 years in, that'll tell you about me. I don't give up.
5 years. Good for you. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about from the glory days to now. Who is Stanley Livingston?
Well, I mean, I started off as a child actor. And it's probably how I'm known to most audiences. Just about anything you do behind the camera, whether you're a writer, producer, director, is usually hidden from view, and all the glory goes to the actors, as it should. But yeah, I lived in Hollywood when I was a kid. My parents moved to Los Angeles from Baltimore about 1947, 48. I came along in 1950. The short cut to my career was I went to a swim school in Hollywood, where the lady who owned the swim school, which was right on Hollywood Boulevard near Western Avenue, was very entrepreneurial, and she wanted to get publicity for her swimming pool, where she taught kids and teenagers how to swim. And she had a porthole cut in the side of her pool, and you could go down a flight of steps, and there was this big 3-4 foot window. Well, she got the idea of having us go underwater and put us on little pedal cars and swings and little toys from the mid-1950s. And she talked some magazines into coming out and covering it. Vogue magazine, McCall's, which were, they were big deals in those days. And that led to a show called You Asked For It, wanted to film a segment on us. And because of that, she got a lot of Hollywood people started bringing their kids there to learn how to swim. One of them was an agent whose daughter was learning how to swim, and she took a liking to me, and my mom and her got along great. And next thing I knew, I was being sent out on auditions, primarily as an extra in those days, just to see if I liked it or how I warmed up to it. And one thing led to another. I got cast as an extra on Ozzie and Harriet, about 1955, 56, the neighborhood kid. And right before we shot the scene, Ozzie Nelson came up to me and said, could you say this line? And I was like, okay. And he told me what to say, and they rolled the camera and we did it again. And the story was he was selling Christmas trees in his backyard to make some extra money at Christmas time. It looked like a forest, and the joke was, all of a sudden, when he's got a client on the line here about ready to buy a Christmas tree, about 10 little kids come out with backpacks and sleeping bags. And my line was, sure was mighty good camping in there, Mr. Nelson. And I said it, and we did it again, and it was a close-up. And after the day's work, he came up to my mom and said, gee, I'd like to have him back. He did a great job, and he's cute. And he goes, please leave your information with this lady over here. And I did. And well, unlike most Hollywood stories where somebody says they'll call you or you'll hear from them again in the future, and you don't, Ozzie was true to his word. A couple months later, I was hired again, and did another little gig as a neighborhood kid. And lo and behold, between about 1956 to 1960, I probably did 4 or 5 segments a year for the Nelsons as their go-to little kid in the neighborhood who'd come over and bug or torment Mr. Nelson. And so I credit Ozzie with really getting me started. It afforded me the opportunity, because of that one line, to join the Screen Actors Guild. So I was a professional actor. By age 8, I could go collect unemployment. So that's the real trick. If you're an actor, is can you qualify for the maximum in unemployment? That's my baseline. So has been since I was 7 years old. Wow. But anyway, yeah, that one thing led to another. I started in the Ozzie and Harriet's. The next thing I knew, I got a movie. I was in a movie called The Bonnie Parker story, which was kind of focused more on Bonnie than Clyde, but it was a Bonnie and Clyde story that AIP made. It was double billed with Machine Gun Kelly, with Charles Bronson. And yeah, played in theaters. I think it actually was in the drive-in theaters, one of those, violence movies from about 1958 or so. And then it led to bigger things. I ended up getting cast in Please Don't Eat the Daisies with Doris Day and David Niven, Rally Around the Flag Boys with Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward. And I ended up in between all of that. When I didn't have anything to do on Ozzie and Harriet, I'd wander around on the lot, just because you're bored, and I'd sneak away. My mom wouldn't know where I went, but I'd go on to other people's stages. And next door, they had a horse, and the guy was, showed me how to brush the horse and how to feed him carrots and things that he liked. And the horse's name was Mr. Ed. So that was kind of cool. And then I walked over to this other stage because they had a dog there that I liked to play with. It was a beagle. And it was, he was also an actor. The dog was in the show called The People's Choice with Jackie Cooper. And one of the times when I was there, and the handler was letting me, brush the dog and play with him and stuff, this guy came up to me and said, "Excuse me, who are you and what are you doing here?" And I just said, "Oh, well, I'm an actor, and I'm working over there on that stage, on stage 5 in Ozzie and Harriet." And anyway, this guy talked to me for a while, and I guess he thought I was kind of charming. And then he said, "Can I meet your mom? I'd like to meet your mom." And all I remember thinking is, "Am I in trouble?" And he goes, no, you're not in trouble. So I took him over to meet my mom, and I didn't know who the guy was, but anyway, it turned out it was Jackie Cooper. And he talked to my mom, and then about 2 months later, I was doing a TV pilot for him called Skippy. And for people that are of my ilk that remember TV actors before my time even, but in 1937, Jackie Cooper, who was a big child star, was one of the Little Rascals. Yep. Starred in the original version of The Champ. He was in a movie in 1937 called Skippy. And the movie was nominated for Academy Award. I think it may have won. And he was nominated. So he was the youngest person ever nominated for an Academy Award till they made Kramer versus Kramer. And I think his name was Justin Henry, came along and aced him by a couple of months. So he became the youngest. But yeah, I did this pilot for Jackie Cooper at the end of 1958. So I had just turned 8 years old about the week before we started. And it never sold. Jackie, tried to sell it, but then I think he got interested in another show that he did after that called Hennessy. And he starred as a naval officer, and he was also working as a big-time TV director by that point too. But right. The Skippy pilot afforded me to have a reel, which most actors, you need a reel. If you're working today, you got to have that reel. Well, our reels now come along in terms of video files. Before that, they were on DVD. And before that, you didn't have a reel. You basically had a photograph of yourself, and they'd have to call you in for an interview. But in those days, you had a piece of film. And in this TV pilot, I starred in and literally was on screen probably 85, 90% of the time. So, and my name was above the title. So that was kind of cool. But I was able to show that to, the producers of Please Don't Eat the Daisies. That's how I got the part. And then my parents showed it to the producers who were creating this series called My Three Sons. And they were looking around for somebody about 9, 10 years old. And anyway, in those days, to show the reel, it wasn't like, come over to my house and I'll show you the reel. You had to go rent a movie theater, and you would rent it at night after midnight when they would complete the run of the day or whatever they were showing, and people would come to the theater and watch whatever you had. So the producers of My Three Sons came to this little theater on, I believe it was Santa Monica Boulevard by Crescent Heights, and saw me. And next day I was hired to play Chip on My Three Sons. Wow. And then I had to wait around for 6 months for them to finish casting. I think I was the second person cast. They were looking for the uncle and finally settled on William Frawley, who most people remember as Fred Mertz from I Love Lucy. And then Tim Considine, who had worked with Fred MacMurray in a couple of Disney films just before that. He was in The Shaggy Dog, and I think it was another one he was in. I can't remember offhand, but most people know him from Spin and Marty and the Hardy Boys, the Disney stuff in the afternoon. And then the last guy to be cast was Don Grady, the part of Robbie. We actually started shooting 3 different occasions. The first 2 guys didn't work out. One of them, I think, was Bobby Diamond from Fury. And I think his mom mucked it up for him and made some kind of outrageous demands for profits. And that was just unheard of in those days. And then we started shooting with another actor who we shot for a day or 2, and then they decided he couldn't do comedy. So they let him go, and the word went out they were looking for Robbie. And I remember my mom calling a friend of hers, was Don Grady's mother, who was a children's agent, and said to Mary, you should get Don down here because they're trying to cast another Robbie. They just fired the guy that was working, and we're going to start shooting again in a couple days. So she sent Don Grady in, and he won the part. So now we had all the pieces put together. However, in the 2 little startups that we shot that were unused, they changed our last name. Our original name wasn't Douglas. It was McPherson.
Oh.
So it would have been Steve McPherson, Chip McPherson, Robbie McPherson, Mike McPherson, and Bub O'Casey. So the name changed on the 3rd go-round. And anyway, so we shot with Don, and that was the pilot as it became known to most people. Oh, incidentally, the actor who couldn't do comedy that they fired, that was Ryan O'Neal.
Oh. Oh.
How the world works. Yeah, he would have had his whole career scuttled if he'd been on My 3 Sons. There would have been no Peyton Place, and there would have been, no Barbra Streisand movies, or what was the other one he was in that was great with his daughter, Tatum O'Neal?
Right. Paper Moon?
Paper Moon, yeah, great film. He was great. His daughter was great. But
So
yeah, anyway,
that could do drama, and so he took that off.
it's always like that. And so that was the cast, and we started with that. And like most series, you shoot them and you end the season, and you don't know if you're coming back again. That's just always the way it was. The actor's always the last to know. Maybe about 30 days before we get a letter from the network saying, welcome back, we're shooting another season of My 3 Sons. And that went on and on for 12 years.
That's great. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I had a colleague I spoke to, and she was on a science fiction series that she didn't think was going to run, and so she was waiting to get that note to see if it was renewed, and she didn't realize it until she was in Times Square, and there was a billboard of her saying new season coming, and there was her face. And she said, oh, I guess we're renewed. So yeah, you guys.
Well, yeah, when you get hired, that's usually the way it happens. They don't bother telling actors anything. It's kind of how you find out you're fired too. Nobody calls you. You just read about it in the Reporter or something, like you've been fired or not picked up or let go. It's like, oh man, that hurts.
Going through the script.
Fortunately, that's never happened to me.
No dialogue. What's going on? There's no dialogue.
Yeah. Or you get a script and you're like, where am I? I'm only on the last page. What is this? Yeah, there's all kinds of.
Goodbye. Wait a minute.
Yeah, that, it's merciless. It's what they say about TV producers. Yeah, they don't have a heart. What's the old joke about a friend in the industry? Is somebody will stab you in the chest.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I really am.
Yeah.
You also, it's funny when you mentioned horses for a minute. I know were you in How the West Was Won, the original movie?
I was, yeah, later. Well, I mean, before I got into the industry, when I was about 5 years old, all I wanted to be was a cowboy. I mean, all I have, my home photos are always with a cowboy hat on, a vest, cap guns, a pony with a stick between my legs. Wow. I just really wanted to be a cowboy, and I saw all those early Westerns on TV, and I just really wanted to be a cowboy. And I did have one shot at being one for a day. This is something actually I did well before My 3 Sons, probably one of the first things that I did. I got a commercial with Roy Rogers for a toy lariat, and we're both spinning him, and then he throws the lariat and, goes over me, and he pulls me in. Yeah, I don't know. I have never seen it again. So I think I saw it one time for this toy, but I kept trying to get into Westerns, and I just never got cast. It was weird. They always wanted kids with dark hair. There weren't a lot of blonde cowboys, I guess. And then lo and behold, My 3 Sons started about the 3rd year of My 3 Sons. When we were in hiatus, my agent got a call from a casting person at MGM, and they said that Henry Hathaway wanted to meet me for a part in How the West Was Won. And I was like, oh my God, wow, finally somebody. So I went in. He was really nice guy. You know, I thought he was like Santa Claus. He was just so nice. And anyway, the only caveat was he wanted me to lose about 10 pounds. So I remember that afternoon, my parents joined the gym and I went in and, you know, started working out with a trainer and swimming and all that. And they wanted me to be thinner, I guess, than I was. So went in and that was the gig. And then I got the part and on the set, and it turned out Henry Hathaway wasn't Santa Claus. It was closer to, he was Hitler incarnate on the set. It was like the guy in the Charlie Chaplin movie, you know, that loved you when he was drunk, and when he was sober, he was a jerk. But yeah, you know, he'd be yelling and screaming at everybody, firing gun blanks at people, and, you know, getting into brawls with like the crew guys. So he was a nasty old guy, but that was just his demeanor. And yeah, really the only one that wasn't flustered by that was Debbie Reynolds. You know, she'd stand up, get right in his face, and right back at him like that. And he'd kind of back up, and nobody else had the balls to do that. And I'd never really worked with a director like that. You know, every director I worked with, like Gene Reynolds was like the nicest guy you ever wanted to meet. I mean, I'm friends with him for like 60 years. And, you know, he's the same guy the whole time on the set, off the set. Peter Tewksbury, Leo McCarey, you know, some really big directors. And they just, you know, were regular people, but not this guy. A funny story too, we were shooting How the West Was Won, and this one particular day, man, he was just picking on me and yelling and screaming. And I'm only like, I think I'm 13, almost 14 or something, but it was really scary to have an adult yelling at you. And I don't know whether he could tell that I was sort of, you know, upset by it, but anyway, we got real close to lunch and we shot this scene, and, you know, I wasn't doing something right. And I remember he really was just yelling, and then they called for lunch. And I was like, oh, thank God I can walk away. And so I remember Henry came walking up to me, he says, want to take you out for lunch. And all I remember is I turned to my mom, was like, I don't want to go, you know, but I had to go. So we drove into Prescott, Arizona from wherever the set was. It was like in the middle of nowhere. And anyway, had lunch with the guy. And again, it was just like the day he hired me. He was just, you know, really nice. And we were joking around and laughing and had a nice time, and walked out of the restaurant. And he said, do you like toys? And I was like, well, yeah. And so he goes, I noticed there was a toy store down the street. He goes, why don't we go in there and pick something out for you? And I was like, okay. So we went down, and, you know, I looked at some toys, you know, it's kind of past toys at that. He says, well, what do you like to do? And I said, well, you know, while we've been out here, I've been going off a little bit into the desert, and I've been finding arrowheads, Indian arrowheads and rocks. And there was this big rock collection, like on the top shelf. It was like a fold out, you know, like almost like a bookcase thing, but it must have had like 100 rocks on it, you know, every different kind of geode and rock. And so I guess he saw me looking, he goes, do you like that? And I was like, yeah. And so he says, we'll take it. I don't know what it was, probably a couple $100. It wasn't like one rock. And he paid for it. And I had to carry this big thing back to the car, and came back from lunch. And my mom was like, oh my God, what is that? And I go, he bought me a rock collection. And so in my little pea-brain mind at 14, I thought, wow, I guess, you know, we've got over the hump, and now we're friends, and, you know, everything's going to be copacetic from here on out. And so I got into makeup after lunch, and, you know, went back to the set. First scene, that guy started yelling at me, you little M-effer, you know, and all the words you could imagine, you know, that you think you would yell at an adult. You know, he's yelling at kids. And and the, you know, the welfare worker was so afraid of him, she wouldn't go up and say anything either, but he just loved to curse and yell at people. And finally this stuntman that I kind of liked, who was showing me stuff with a horse, came up to me and says, kid, he goes, you can't take that personal. He does that with everybody, and it doesn't mean he doesn't like you. In fact, you should be worried if he's not doing that, because it means he probably doesn't. But if you're being called, you know, some pretty bad words by Henry Hathaway, he goes, you're in good company. That's the way he put it. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. And then I kind of got it. But that, yeah, it's just the way he was. That's the way he worked on the set. And, you know, as soon as the camera stopped rolling, he'd just go back to being some other guy, you know, just a completely different person. Yeah.
demeanor.
Oh my
And
God, yeah, you thought his head was going to blow off. He'd get so mad and turn red. But, you know, and I being a kid, I didn't get it, you know, and then I'd never worked with somebody like that. And the adults, you know, had a way of dealing with them where he would just do it and they're like, you know, they'd just shine him on and walk away or wouldn't say anything. And that's how they dealt with it.
That brings up a really interesting question. You hear about these kids with stage mothers and things like that. It doesn't seem like you had a stage mother. So
I had a real mother there at that point. Later, during the course of production, she brought in the lady that watched me on My Three Sons. I had a guardian. My mom came down for maybe the first month of My Three Sons, I think, just to make sure it was okay. And she didn't want to be a stage mom, and it was boring. And she hired this lady named June Cole, who became my official guardian from the first year all the way till the time I turned 18. So for about 8 years. In fact, her son was Tommy Cole, who was one of the original Mouseketeers.
Right.
If you watch the Mouseketeers, remember one of the Mouseketeers named Tommy, that was her son. And so everybody kind of knew each other, you know, especially with the Disney clique. You know, Tommy was Disney, Don Grady was a Mouseketeer, Tim Considine was a Mouseketeer, and then a lot of Mouseketeers would come down to the set and visit because they were working there. Bobby Burgess, and Cubby, and Karen, and so, you know, eventually I got to know all the Mouseketeers and kind of became a Mouseketeer.
How did it feel for you as a kid? Okay, you have lots of kids around you, so I guess it's sort of like the great equalizer there as well. But how did it feel you as a kid? It's yes, we hear these stories of stage moms. Okay, Gypsy Rose Lee had someone to teach her what to do, but
Yeah.
How was it for you? You're thrown into this world. What was it like to grow up in this world?
It was interesting, you know, and it's not like something I didn't want to do, you know, and I think that's the distinction between me and maybe some of the other kids out of my ilk that starred on different TV series of the day. A lot of them, I think, really didn't want to do it, and they were being made to do it by their parents for whatever reason, and didn't have a good time on the set, and didn't like interviewing, didn't like auditioning, didn't like the long hours of being on the set and not being able to be with their friends. But yeah, my parents found a way to balance all that out. You know, when I got home, I instantly, you know, was outside playing baseball in the park or catch up with my buddies. So I had that sense of normalcy. And then the other unusual thing about myself, and then later my brother, as he started to do following my footsteps and become an actor, we went back to public school. Unlike most actors or child actors, teen actors that era, I went to Hollywood Professional School on, well, I guess it was Hollywood Boulevard at Western. It was a big building there, and what it was a school for kids that were in the arts. But you know, you were cut off really from real people. You know, you're with your own ilk. You know, I think you could have become very spoiled or very big head about yourself if you're only consorting around with all of your peers. I went back to public school, and you know, I'm dealing with real kids who didn't know anything, and you know, you'd either make friends with them, or you know, you'd have fights after school because they didn't like your show or whatever. But you know, I learned how, I think, to deal with real people, which is primarily where you're going to be living the rest of your life instead of in this showbiz bubble, at least for me. And, you know, it looked like a lot of the kids that went through that school had, you know, quite a few issues afterwards with adjusting either to doing something else or transitioning into becoming adult actors. You know, you're made to feel you're special when, you know, I'm still waiting to feel special. It hasn't happened yet.
Oh my goodness, please, please, please. You're immensely special. You're also lucky. You're telling me that you worked with Ozzie and Harriet, then you worked on My Three Sons, and you worked with Jackie Cooper. You worked with these wonderful people, but very nice people. You had this amazing lead actor. You had Fred McMurray, and you had firstly William Frawley, and then eventually William Demarest. So you had these very powerful but very good people that you're working with. You think life would have been different if you started on the Twilight Zone or Dragnet?
I always wanted to do a Twilight Zone. Hey, listen, that's what I'm saying. I always wanted to do a Western, you know, just a TV series or whatever. And then as luck would have it, you know, How the West Was Won turned out to be this iconic Western, as good as, maybe better than any other Western, primarily because it had every big star of the era in 62, 63, 64. You know, talking about John Wayne, Henry Fonda, Jimmy Stewart, Debbie Reynolds. I mean, the list goes on and on. Everybody was in that movie. And it's an amazing movie. And it's an amazing movie just from an historic standpoint to be in, because it was actually the last movie shot in Cinerama, which I don't know how much you follow Cinerama, but Cinerama was really responsible for putting people back into theater. You know, because what happened prior to that in the late 40s, 50s, when TV came about, you know, they were closing theaters left and right because people would buy a TV set and defect to sitting in their living room as opposed to going out to a movie. And they needed to think of some spectacular thing to do to, you know, wow the people to get them back into the theaters. Well, these guys, they weren't really movie makers. They were more engineers and scientists, figured out a way to hook 3 cameras together so you get this very wide screen, almost, I think it's 160 degrees. So not quite the periphery of human vision, but pretty close to it. So when you're in a theater and that's projected, it's, you know, when you realize all the movies up until that time were in that 3x4 format,
Right.
like what you saw in early TV, just a square box. And all of a sudden that square box opened up and kept opening up on the screen. And you're looking at this thing that's so wide, you know, it was amazing. And when Cinerama first came out, it was such a special event that people would actually put on suit and ties and tuxedos and go to the movies.
Oh,
and, you know, when I look at it now, I remember my dad took us to a couple. This is Cinerama, and I forget which other ones, but, you know, when you're a kid, it was really exciting because they had the Cinerama camera mounted on the front of a roller coaster. And, you know, you're seeing it in Cinerama, which emulates human vision. I mean, how it emulates it is, it's like, well, when you look at something in real life, it's just sort of there.
right.
But if you're in a car, the main part is sort of, that's where you're going and it's static, but the sides are whooshing by. That's the effect you would get in Cinerama if the camera was moving, or if something, or if it was in the nose of an airplane. You really had the sensation of movement. So for, you know, I guess about 5-6 years, Cinerama was something. However, they were producing the most boring films in the world, especially looking at them in retrospect. You know, they were basically travelogues. They'd take you to, you know, the 7 wonders of the world or different places on Earth, or you would watch an opera, you know, in the Moscow Opera House, and you're going, oh my God, this is like in Cinerama. But the reality is, you guys could have shot this with the security camera on the back wall. That's about how interesting it was, especially seeing it now. But, you know, I can imagine how audiences felt in early 50s, 55, 56. So it opened the door to widescreen photography, because after How the West Was Won, they said, well, this idea is a keeper. We got to keep the widescreen. We don't like the idea of having 3 cameras and running 3 times the film we need, and then having to edit 3 different reels and keeping them in sync. And then you have to project it, which requires, I think it was 2 people for each projector. So now you got 6 projectionists. That's why it was a very expensive proposition to do. But then somebody came up with just the idea of doing widescreen with a different kind of lens and an element in there that would crop it. So it was widescreen. You know, what we know as widescreen could be like, you know, 1.85 or 2.15 or whatever it is. But, you know, Cinerama was even a little bit wider than that. And then they came up with the idea of shooting with a single lens and squeezing it onto 35 millimeter film with what was called an anamorphic lens. So now it made it really inexpensive to shoot. You didn't need 65 millimeter film anymore. You know, you could go ahead to squeeze all that information onto one thing, and when you would project it, it would be as wide as the Cinerama. And that's what we have today in the theaters. But they saved the movie theaters. I don't know if they're going to be able to save them now, but
Yeah, let's see
it's
what
a different world out there.
we're going to talk about that for sure. That's the elephant. No, we're in the room. That's the elephant outside the room. Now you're talking very passionately about the Cinerama and camera work.
Well, yeah, just because it was so historical. Oh, incidentally, I produced a Cinerama film in 2012. Actually, it was the first one produced in 50 years. And it turned out that the camera that we utilized was a restored camera that was used to shoot How the West Was Won. And we even got Debbie Reynolds to play a part in it. So it's very recursive. It's like you're seeing the film, but there's parts of other films that are in it. And, just the whole idea. And then, I was an actor in the last film, and now 50 years later, I ended up in this particular film too. So
What film
it
was
was really weird. It's called In the Picture. But yeah, we did it as kind of just to show that it could be done again. I mean, having done it, I would never want to do it again. It was a nightmare. Plus, we didn't have the blimp for the camera, so everything had to be completely, re-recorded in the end, 80-yard.
You just saved me the perfect segue. So you then, as much as you gained fame as an actor, and you were in a lot of other series at that point. I saw Room 222, and several others.
Yeah, that's kind of what you do when you come out of a TV series. Part of me was, I can't wait for this thing to be over with and see what else is out there. And then the other, when you're with people 12 years, they're your family. The crew people, the cast. And in my particular case, one of them was my family. My brother came on to the show as a friend in '63, and then 2 years later, when Tim Considine left the show, Barry was adopted and became the third son. So, that was strange. But when it's over, you know what the drill is. You're going to become a journeyman actor, and you're going to try and go out. You audition for different parts, and you're starting all over, and I think that's the part of show business that I think a lot of actors who were on shows really resented, and they resented the auditioning part because they felt, hey, I proved myself, why do I have to? Just call me if you want me, but it's just not the way it's done. And anybody that resisted that, your time in the industry was very short. So for a while I, made the rounds, did guest starring parts, going from star of a TV show one day to just 20 guys in a room, hoping to get the part the next time, and they pick you. Fortunately for me, sometimes they did, and then sometimes they didn't. So you never knew why.
It's a very splintered industry. You could be, yes, you're one of the stars of My Three Sons, but what about those people who watch Dragnet? What about those people who watch Twilight Zone, who watch Bewitched? They may not have heard. So new audiences, new everything.
Over a period of time, you get kids that grew up watching My Three Sons, but you know what? At the end, they were grown up and had kids, and probably the last couple of years, their kids were watching My Three Sons, and on and on and on for generations. So, it's a crazy thing. But for the actor, psychologically, that's kind of what I'm talking about. It's really hard. It can be very hard to go, wow, I'm a pretty big star, at least in terms of TV, which you look at TV in the movie industry now, where's the movie industry? Unless you're in one of these tentpole productions, there's virtually nothing. All the big money and, the big stars have come to TV. So we were kind of, before our time, having been in a TV show that went on and on and on for 12 years and 380 episodes. That lasted and immediately went into syndication for about 15 years, and then on to cable for Nick at Night for 10 years, TV Land for 10 years. And I can't even count the number of channels that have, hosted My Three Sons.
And you had a movie star as your principal player, so you broke ground there as well.
Yeah, that was unheard of. Yeah, when Fred, a lot of people, they look at the show and go, oh, yeah, I kind of recognize Fred. Well, Fred McMurray in 1960 was a different story. That would have been probably like about 10 years ago, Tom Cruise quitting his movie career and coming over to TV. It was unheard of. And CBS was just beside themselves that they had this amazingly huge movie star that was going to star in a TV series that the network was going to be exhibiting. So, it was unheard of. It was, like I said, I don't think most people really know how big Fred McMurray was as an actor at that time. He was probably the highest paid actor in Hollywood, had a career of about 80 movies before he came there, and was a huge star, not just another actor or a star, but he, really was a bona fide, I guess, a superstar, just from all the work that he had.
His image transcended because he did romantic, he did mysteries, famous for Double Indemnity, things like that. And then he went on to do Disney movies. He was the absent-minded professor or something like that for the Disney movies. So he had he was probably a great help because he had so many demographics looking at him that they all got to look at you. which
and
is
a fan base from 50 years of being in the movies. You know, they weren't watching him in TV. All those people that were watching TV would go to the movies to see a
yep.
Fred MacMurray movie. So yeah, he brought a lot of, a lot of stuff with him that, made it a good deal to bet on him for a TV series. And, by that point too, there was a thing that happened to him. It's kind of funny, but yeah, you're right. He had a, very, his career was varied, from segueing from comedy to drama,
Sure.
from being a light comedy like in The Egg and I to, heavy duty bad guy, Double Indemnity, The Apartment, Cane Mutiny, and then a couple of, lighter films, or The Apartment, lighter films like The Shaggy Dog and The Absent-Minded Professor. But yeah, what happened was he went to Disneyland. This was probably about 1960, 61. And some lady at Disneyland had seen him in The Apartment and was so incensed that he was using Jack Lemon's apartment to have the solicit affair that she was hitting him over the head with her purse. And that was it. He decided he wasn't going to play a heavy anymore, that it just, we didn't know what was going on, but your fans will let you know.
Vincent Price tells the opposite story. He was a matinee idol for decades.
Yes.
And right after House of Wax, he just said, I'm having too good a time. And he just kept on playing the heavy. And people.
Yeah, the heavy, and I think those type of films where you could do a more broader type of acting appeal to him. I could see him, especially in theater, really having fun, where, in a regular dramatic movie, everything is kind of held back and internalized. But, when you're doing those horrors, you can be as broad as you want to be, almost Shakespearean.
It sounds to me like you were able to grow up well in this industry, and you're also smart enough to take on other positions. You produced, obviously, as you mentioned, you directed, you wrote, you yourself gave yourself quite a varied career. Act 2 seemed to be behind the camera.
Yeah. It's, well, part of it was, I finished My Three Sons, and I did some other roles and, movies, some of which I'm not exactly proud of, like Smokey and the Hot Wire Gang or 60-Foot Centerfold, those kind of schlocky things. But, that's kind of what was coming your way if you had just been a TV actor. It was really hard to get into a legitimate film. And it wasn't that you didn't want to be there or you wouldn't have been good. It's the casting people, the era that I came out of. You were either a TV actor or, you were an actor that was cut out to be in the movies. Never should they cross. And it didn't happen until much later. So yeah, we were kept from doing a lot of things. So the only thing open really to actors who'd been on a TV series that somebody thought, wow, this guy can bring a great demographic to my movie and put butts in the seats were, Roger Corman style films.
The Independent.
Yeah. I did actually a Corman film, but not for Roger. I did it for his brother, Gene Corman, called Private Parts, before there was another Private Parts later that I think, what was his name? Howard Stern did, but had nothing to do with ours. Ours was kind of a murder mystery, very Hitchcockian, but the title was probably not the best choice in 1974. This is when there were a lot of porno theaters.
Right.
And the title kind of suggested something that wasn't really there. But the newspapers wouldn't run the ad because of the title, and they put it in the porno section where, I don't know if you remember, like the regular part of the papers in black ink, and they'd have a page of, X-rated films, and they were kind of grayed out. And we ended up in the grayed out thing because of the title. Oh. And, but we got a great review from Judith Christ, from big, movie critic. She gave it a rave review.
Well, yes. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So that was there. And, the guy that directed it, Paul Bartel, she felt he could be the next Hitchcock. But that title kept him from being the next Hitchcock. And the title meant after about 6 months or a year, that movie went into the MGM library, never to be seen again for about 30 years. Yeah. Then it kind of got, as times changed, they brought it back out. And I've heard it's a cult film. So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, they changed the name?
Well, they did change the name. When I got the script, it was called Private Parts. And I was going, ooh, that doesn't sound good. And then, then it got changed to Private Parts. I'm going, well, it just went from bad to worse. So, I don't know what they were thinking with that title. It certainly could have come up with something more benign, but you know, whatever. That was the choice that was made. They made the prints, and now you're stuck with it at $10,000 print with your title on it.
Well, happily, you're still here to see it become a cult classic. It's very
Yeah.
sad to hear about.
Well, they used to run it. We had a theater in LA called the New Art, which ran cult movies all the time. That was one of their venues. Sometimes they'd run stuff like old movies, B movies. And they would hire this LA improv group called the LA Connection. And what would happen is they would turn the sound off, and they would have like 10 actors from the LA Connection completely recreate the story and plot and new characters. So, you know, it could have been like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but then it became about having this dinner party where they order from a Chinese restaurant and they're waiting for pea pods to be delivered. They didn't get the pea pods. They got the beef and lo mein, but no pea pods. So it was just, they do the most insane, you know, I forgot what the guy's name is, Ken Scove or something. It was genius, some of the stuff they came up with. You know, they do Plan 9 from Outer Space, Bride of the Monster, Terror of Tiny Town, a Western starring all midgets, or Santa Claus versus the Martians, where Pia Zadora, when she's about 5 years old.
One of my favorites.
Goofball films. Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow. You've had quite the journey. Today, it's what are you doing today? Today, are you producing? Are you directing? Do you?
No, actually, I'm pulling weeds in my backyard today.
Well,
today was weed day. Yeah, for me, I got interested behind the camera while we were on My Three Cents. When I was about 16, 17, I think I bought a couple cameras, and you know, and I thought, wow, you know, I really like shooting and trying to cut this stuff together. And I thought, well, maybe I'd like to do that. So I go around and to the other sets and harass all the directors and take them out to lunch and try and pick their brain, you know, about what worked, what didn't, or what should I do to become a director and or a producer. And, you know, I was at a great place because all the guys that worked on the show, you know, they were older guys and they just wanted to impart all the information they picked up over the year, you know, whether, you know, learning film stocks or what's parallax or why would I use this lens and not the other lens. And when you're editing, why don't I cut the picture and the sound at the same time, you know, and you get these guys to really reveal all their secrets. So I had all that. Then I went to college and took film classes and I thought, well, this is more for me. You know, I think I'm starting not to like being in front of the camera. I'd rather put this together. I mean, that was the bad part about being an actor was you're always waiting for the phone to ring. You know, I used to sit there and go, ring, ring, you know, and then it would ring and you'd pick it up and your agent tell you where to go and you go on your audition. But, you know, I thought if you're a producer director, you'd be doing something every day or you would at least be in somewhat control of it to the extent you could be. And I formed a production company with another guy and we started shooting commercials and industrials and whatever. Ooh, what's that? Not now.
I think I lost you. There you go.
I just got a thing wanted to update you right now, right in the middle of the interview.
Of course we do.
How odd. Now you got to edit.
Okay. Please. Live.
Anyway, so yeah, I had this production company. We just started doing all sorts of stuff and music videos, and it was a lot of fun. I thought, you know, I think I'm just going to go in this direction. And I didn't turn down anything acting, you know, if it came up and I wasn't working on something else. But yeah, you know, over the course of the years, I've done everything from educational stuff to, like I said, commercials to industrial to feature film, TV series, whatever. Yeah, in fact, probably the thing I'm most proud of, I know it's weird, but I did I call it a documentary series. I guess I called it that because of the Screen Actors Guild, that it sort of afforded me certain privileges if I did it that way. But it's really an educational piece for actors. What it was is called The Actor's Journey. And yeah, the problem for actors isn't the acting part. You know, that's the part we love to do. We get up on stage and we get in front of a camera and you know, we act. But what happens if you're new to the business, it shouldn't happen to a dog, and it's because part of the business is not taught. And what you find out, it's a two-part business. Part one being, yeah, you learn the art and craft of acting, and you perfect that, and you're ready to go with that. Then you get out of school after you've paid whatever, $5,000, $10,000, $100,000 to Yale or Harvard to go to their drama school, and then you hit the road running, and everything comes to a screeching halt. It's like, I don't know what to do and who to call. How do I get an agent? This person said this to me. What does that mean? Or I went on an interview and, you know, they asked me to do that. should I be responding to that or not have done that? So, you know, having done it for so long, and then having as an actor, and then working behind the camera, you know, from either being a producer or a director or writer, or even being involved in casting, you know, I thought, wow, you know, somebody really should do something about this and put out some information, not on the craft, but on the business side, what we call the non-performance skills needed to get into the industry and to sustain a career. So I put this program together. It's a 10-hour-long program. It was originally on DVD, an 8-part series that's about an hour and a half each per DVD that we had. And I went out and I said, you know what, I don't want to do it. So I'm going to get people to teach it, you know, by illustration. So I brought in 100 people from the industry, and the idea was to bring in people that had at least 20, 30 years worth of experience, so they weren't new to the industry. So they were all seasoned actors, 45 of whom had been either nominated or won Academy, Emmy, Golden Globe Awards. I got the president of the Directors Guild of America. I got the president of Screen Actors Guild. I got about 10 people from the various committees and boards at the Guild. And it's all on totally the business side of being an actor. So we ended up with about 60, I think we're 65 segments total. You know, and most actors think the business of acting is get a photo, get an agent, get a resume, get a reel if you can, and get a headshot, and you're done with the business part. And it's like, really? I'm going, well, then how come I have 65 segments if there's only 5? So, yeah. So anyway, I feel that if anything, like I said, my 3 cents, that's going to be on that'll be my epitaph. But if I had my druthers, I'd rather be known for the actor's journey, which really took something really needed.
Can we find that somewhere? Is that on YouTube?
You know what? We had it up. I pulled it down about 2 years ago when I moved, and I just couldn't deal with fulfilling the orders. You know, they were being fulfilled on DVD. But it's a whole new world now, and we're getting ready to come back up again. But this time it'll be totally on the internet. You know, you can just watch and download, or you know, watch the segments you want to watch, or take the whole program. So yeah, it should be up. I'm hoping the next couple of months. So basically I had to chop it all up and do all the codes over again, turn it into H.264 video, and get it ready for the internet and have it uploadable, and all the other stuff that would go to it, that links to it, how you find it. And then also from the website, so you can jump over and just watch, you know, watch the clips you want to watch, or watch the whole thing, or watch various, like I said, there were about 8 different kind of general topics that, you know, you'd have the general topics, but then you would have 65 segments that comprised all those. So yeah, it's really, you know, it's soup to nuts, that's for sure. Wouldn't leave anything out.
Please tell me when it's up. I would love to tell my viewers about this. It's like a gold mine. Oh my God!
It is a gold mine.
And these people are talking. It's amazing.
It's really fun to watch too, because you're going to know everybody in it. You know, a lot of them were TV actors, but there's some, you know, like Michael York. It definitely was big star when we shot this. A couple of people have passed away, like Sherman Hemsley. But it's interesting, you know, how people think people become involved in the industry, or like Danny Trejo. You know, he's probably, you know, most, well, you know, I went to Yale or Harvard, I went to UCLA. Danny Trejo came from Folsom Prison to show business. So there's a lot of people that don't necessarily go the same route, but how they got in is very instrumental as to things to think about if you're trying to launch your career. You know, everybody just thinks of the same old way. And that's what this thing does. It really opens it up. So you see a lot of other possibilities, things that people may have told you because they've only been in the industry a year or two that are completely wrong. You know, you have people who've been doing it 30 years and can tell you exactly what that means. Yeah, so we, you know, like I said, tried to cover every aspect of it. And it took me about 4 years to do the project. It was overwhelming. And then the editing was just insane, because I originally had you know, an editing crew, and after about a week, I realized these guys, because they weren't actors, they kept turning to me and go, this guy just said this, what does that mean? And then I go, oh my God, so I go, well, and then I'm finding myself explaining what the business, principle is that he's trying to tell to editors. And I finally had to let everybody go. And I realized, you know what? There's nobody going to be able to do this but me, because I'm the guy that knows what all this stuff means and how to put it in sequence and have it be, not only the information I wanted, but to keep it interesting too, because we had 100 people. You can't just lump, 100 people into one segment. So it's like, how do I dole these people out, over a 10-hour program? So new faces are always popping in when you least expect. And
Sure.
it'd be, maybe, somebody from some TV show, think, oh my God, I didn't realize that. And look who's telling me that. Or a director, like one of the directors we had was big director, Richard Donner, directed all the Lethal Weapon movies. And,
Right.
yeah, he was great, but part of that was trying to let people know it's not just acting from the actor's point of view. There's a lot of other point of views of what you do, and sometimes they're diametrically opposed. So you kind of need to know all this. So when you're in a room with these people, you can kind of feel it out as to, who the power person in the room may be, and maybe skew what you're doing a little bit more towards that. It's just so many little subtle things that, you would think would mean nothing, but it can be the difference between getting hired and not getting hired. And that, even in itself, we explain, you're not really there to get hired. I know that sounds crazy. I mean, you are and you aren't. If you get it, it's sort of like, okay, that's the cherry on top of the ice cream. What you're really there for is to meet the 5 guys in the room, or the women and the men in the room, because this is about one job. These people go on next week or next month and are doing other things. You want to impress them so they remember you. Maybe they can't use you right now, but they'll go, that guy that was on that interview, hey, I want him.
Everything is networking.
It is.
Networking.
Yeah. Your job is really to make yourself memorable in that room. And if you get the part, congratulations.
You exemplify 2 things that I have in my criteria of what a real professional is. Number 1, being a nice guy. And oh my God, you are such a nice guy. And secondly, to give back. And I think what you did with this 65-part series, you're handing this legacy to the next generation. And considering you came from its infancy, you're really showing us everything. My last question to you, and you're one of these people who can definitely give me an educated answer, because you were there when, you were there now. What's going to happen when the lights come back on and the plague is over and we go back to work?
Well, the industry's been through this a lot of times. We talked about one of them when, TV came and everyone went, well, that's the end of the movie industry. And all these movie theater guys scratching their heads like, they just stole our audience. How do we get them back? We got to get better popcorn or something here. And then that whole idea of the widescreen, they saw the opportunity for them, put it in. And, over the years, TV, remember when we had the writer's strike?
Yes.
It's like, we don't have scripted shows. What are we going to do? There's a hole of time. We have to have time. They thought of reality TV, and they came back, and reality TV took over TV for 10 strong years, and still to this day, there's a lot of The Bachelor or Bachelorette, and all kinds of shows that are reality based. I don't particularly like them, but if I was a producer, maybe you'd kind of open the door to it. I never really liked that particular format. I've always been scripted, and the idea of designing a script and all that and writing it, and that appeals to me more. But yeah, we're coming out of a period with this COVID that, production's been suspended, and, you can't do what we're doing. This is sort of what you can do instead of. Right. But how do you do a movie like that where, you just like have a bunch of boxes with everybody saying their lines? Or maybe that's why, the CGI is almost perfected to a certain point where, you create CGI characters that look like the person, bring them in, scan them, put nodes on them. And then you can hire anybody after that to do the physicality part of it. And then you put a world around them, and then you just hire the actors to do the voices afterwards.
Absolutely.
So scary, but that may be where it could go, or some of it may go there. Because right now, what they're talking about to open the industry, unless you're a studio, sounds really expensive and unfeasible to me.
Right.
basically the cat, and everybody's got their own take on it. The producers have got their guidelines from the state. The actors are going to get their guidelines from Screen Actors Guild, and the crew guys are going to get theirs from IATSE. So who knows, they're all going to be in sync. But yeah, wear masks, wear gloves. Well, right now I was supposed to shoot a pilot. It was actually going to be shot on May 16th. It was something simple. It was just a talk show format, but it was kind of combined with a cooking show. So it was a fusion thing. So you're there cooking, but you're also talking. But then as this thing started to get more and more, I was hearing about it, I'm going, I wonder if this is going to mess up our plans. And sure enough, by March 1st, I had to tell my partner, I said, I don't think we should do this right now. One, sounds dangerous, but if you're a producer, and I'm also the business guy, going, this sounds like a lot of liability to me, that if we don't know what the rules are and don't follow them, and God forbid one of the crew guys or one of the actors gets sick, or even worse, somebody dies, you've got legal exposure there, and maybe even the investor does. I don't think an LLC is going to protect you if you knew it was dangerous and you went ahead anyway. And so, yeah, we're just sitting here, and that whole thing's on ice till it feels more comfortable. Or, I even gave them, they're younger than me, I said, hey, look, I'm the kind of guy this thing likes. It wants to eat me up. So maybe you guys should just go on without me. I don't feel like giving up my life just for a TV talk show. Maybe if it was Gone with the Wind or, Star Wars or something. Yeah, but not take a chance, but not for a TV talk show. I think I'll keep myself intact and just wait it out. But it's scary times from that standpoint, because what do you do? It's what, I said, look, the crew can wear the masks and gloves, but at some point when we're ready to shoot, those actors got to take those masks off, and they're going to be standing right next to each other. No way to fake that. What am I doing? Like shooting something where everything's a single and you don't see the other person? And then, we're talking about food being there and people touching food, and a food preparer, a stylist. I go, there's just so many things that don't seem like it's in this particular piece's favor to get started. And then, like I said, there is the liability factor that if something were to happen. Yeah, I've read most of the guidelines. You need to have like a health person on the set. You need to have somebody that checks temperatures every morning when you walk in, and I think several times during the day. Before you shoot, you got to basically fumigate and sterilize the set. So you're going to be there a couple of days before, hanging lights and doing all the stuff you have to do to prep. And then you have to clean it, then clean it again and again. I mean, I know it's bad enough, let me tell you, shooting something even simple when you don't have to do all that. So that's, I don't know. It just sounds scary. I can't imagine if you had a movie schedule. That would really be heartbreaking.
So then, you've given essentially the same answer I've heard, which was we could do this, but in the end, I don't know.
Well, in the end, like I said, it always boils down to you've got somebody's money, and unless you're totally unscrupulous, which I'm not. If I have some guy's money, I'm looking out for his money. And if I take the money and don't think I can shoot it, then I'm a crook. And if something happens when it was already announced that this, disease is out there and it's mucking things up, and you end up not being able to shoot it or not finish it, or you do finish it, but then your lead actor got sick and then died, I don't want that on my conscience. So it's, it just seems really the correct thing to do is you just, unfortunately, gonna have to wait. I don't know. That's where my sensibilities are. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are like, hey, grab the money and do it. You're never going to get the money again. So
that's why I say you're a nice guy. You're not going to do that. Stanley, thank you so much. This has been amazing. What was supposed to be a stroll down memory lane has turned out to show our audience a great theatrical journeyman. Who's out there sharing and giving back. So I've
got a lot of stories, that's for sure. Yeah, by the way, if you want to check out that actor's journey, there is some stuff up on YouTube. We put some teaser clips up with, I think, about 40 or 50 of the people that are in it. So if you go to the actor's journey on YouTube, you can access the clips that we had. There's some really fun people there. And it's fun to watch, even if you're not an actor, just to see all these faces and talking about their careers and things that happened to them. But, you know, things they're talking about all had a point that are kind of related to this business part of it.
I will definitely make sure that people go to that. I will definitely put that link when I spread this interview, which I will let you know when that happens.
All right. Yeah, that sounds great. It's been fun talking to you. And
indeed. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Here's to one day meeting you in person.
It's the next best thing. This is the way we do it now.
Yeah, really.
2020. We're never going to see anybody again or eat with anybody. It's like,
don't have to put on pants. Okay.
I was wondering, should I wear my mask for the interview just so I look like I was doing the right thing?
You're at home and your butler doesn't seem to care. So
no,
I think you're okay.
Funny part is he hasn't moved in a long time.
Thank you so much. It was really
all right. Talk to you soon. Thanks again. Bye, Jay.